The observation deck overlooked operating room 3 like a theater balcony, all glass and sterile light. Dr. Claire Shepard stood at the back. Weight shifted to her right leg, left hand resting on the handle of her forearm crutch. She'd arrived early, as always. 6:45 for a 7 o'clock orientation. Below, surgical staff prepped for the morning's first case, a routine appendectomy, according to the schedule board. The door behind her opened with a pneumatic hiss. "You're the replacement resident?" The voice carried the particular tone of a man accustomed to being heard. Dr. Marcus Feldman entered, white coat crisp, silver hair swept back like he'd just stepped out of a medical journal photo shoot. Chief of surgery, decorated, published. Legend in his own mind and, to be fair, in several peer-reviewed journals. Claire turned, extended her hand. "Dr. Claire Shepard, first-year surgical resident. I transferred from—" "Christ, can you even stand for a 6-hour surgery?" His eyes fixed on her crutch, then traced up to her face with the kind of assessment usually reserved for damaged equipment. Not malicious, exactly. Clinical. The way you'd evaluate whether a tool was fit for purpose. Claire's hand hung in the air between them for another moment before she lowered it. "I manage fine, sir. My evaluation's from—" "I read your file." Feldman moved past her to the glass, hands clasped behind his back. "Community college undergraduate. State school medical degree. No research publications. And apparently some kind of mobility issue that wasn't disclosed in your application." "It was disclosed. Page 3 of my medical clearance forms." "Well," he didn't turn around, "I'm sure you'll find observing to be educational. We run a tight program here, Dr. Shepard. Metropolitan General isn't a place where we make accommodations that compromise patient safety." The words landed soft, reasonable, deadly. Claire's fingers tightened on the crutch handle. She'd expected this, prepared for it, but preparation and experience were different animals. "I don't require accommodations, Dr. Feldman. I'm cleared for full surgical duty. We'll see." He checked his watch, platinum band catching the fluorescent light. "Observation for the first month. If you can keep up with rounds without slowing down the team, we'll discuss time." Fair? It wasn't fair. It wasn't even close to fair. But Claire had learned a long time ago that fair was a concept that died quickly under fire. "Yes, sir." Feldman left without another word. Claire stood alone in the observation deck, watching the surgical team below move through their choreographed prep. Her leg ached, a deep bone throb that started around 4 a.m. every morning and didn't quit until she'd stretched, medicated, and lied to herself about how much it hurt. The door opened again. A younger doctor entered. Female. Dark hair pulled into a neat bun, surgical cap already in place. She noticed Claire and smiled, genuine warmth that felt like sunlight after a long winter. "You're the new resident? I'm Dr. Yuki Tanaka, 2nd year. Don't let Feldman get to you. He's like that with everyone at first." "Just at first?" Yuki laughed. "Okay, fair point. He's like that with everyone, period. But especially with new transfers. He thinks anyone who didn't train at Hopkins or Mayo is basically a carnival barker with a stethoscope." Claire allowed herself a small smile. "Good to know it's not personal." "Oh, it's definitely personal. He just personalizes his contempt universally." Yuki moved to the glass, observing the OR below. "You're on observation duty? For the month. That's actually not terrible. You get to watch without the pressure. I spent my first month basically retracting organs and trying not to faint." She glanced at Claire's crutch. A brief flicker of curiosity quickly controlled. "Professional. Injury? Old one. Doesn't affect my work. Wasn't suggesting it did." Yuki's tone stayed light, but her eyes were sharp, observant, the kind of person who noticed things and filed them away. "You coming to the resident lounge after? Coffee's terrible, but it's free, and Dr. Moss usually brings donuts on Mondays." "Dr. Moss?" "Senior attending. Feldman's protege. Well, you'll meet him." The way she said it carried a warning. The morning round started at 7:30. 12 residents, 4 attendings, moving through the surgical ward like a medical parade. Claire kept to the back, crutch tapping a steady rhythm on the linoleum. Her leg screamed by the 3rd patient room, but she'd learned to partition pain into a separate room in her mind. Acknowledge it, file it, Keep moving. Dr. Richard Moss walked near the front, just behind Feldman. 40-something expensive shoes, the kind of handsome that knew it. He glanced back during a lull, eyes landing on Claire. Hope she doesn't trip over her crutch during rounds, he said to the resident beside him, voice just loud enough to carry. Last thing we need is a liability lawsuit from our own staff. A few residents laughed. Not cruel laughter exactly. Nervous. The kind you give when someone with power makes a joke and you're not sure if participating is optional. Claire kept her expression neutral. She'd heard worse. Done worse. Survived worse. Yuki, walking beside her, leaned in. Moss is an ass. Ignore him. Already forgotten. But she hadn't. The brain doesn't forget. It catalogs. Stores. Adds to the list of things that will matter later, when the stakes are higher than hurt feelings. They reached the last patient, a middle-aged man scheduled for a gallbladder removal that afternoon. Routine. Feldman barely glanced at the chart. Cholecystitis, textbook presentation. Dr. Moss, you'll take this one. Good teaching case for the residents. Moss nodded, already moving on. Claire stepped forward, voice quiet. Dr. Feldman? He turned, eyebrows raised. The entire group stopped. Yes, Dr. Shepard. May I see the chart? A pause. Long enough to feel uncomfortable. You may observe Dr. Moss's review after rounds. We're on a schedule. I understand, sir. I just noticed the patient's posture. He's guarding his left shoulder. Feldman's expression shifted from dismissive to irritated. This is a gallbladder case, Dr. Shepard. The gallbladder is not located in the shoulder. Referred pain can present in the shoulder. Care's sign. If there's splenic involvement, the ultrasound was clear. Gallstones, inflamed gallbladder, no other pathology. Feldman's voice hardened. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but perhaps focus on observing rather than diagnosing conditions you haven't been trained to recognize yet. The group had gone silent, every resident staring. Some sympathetic, most just uncomfortable. Claire met Feldman's eyes, held them, then nodded. Yes, sir. The rounds continued. Claire said nothing else, but when they passed the patient's room again, she glanced through the window, saw the way he held himself, the slight yellowing in his eyes that spoke of something beyond simple gallbladder inflammation, the faint scar on his abdomen, partially visible above his gown. Old trauma, blunt force. She knew that presentation, knew it the way you know a song you've heard 1,000 times. Later, in the resident lounge, Moss held court near the coffee maker. Did you see the new transfer try to diagnose shoulder pain as a spleen issue? He laughed, shaking his head. I mean, points for creativity, but maybe learn to walk before you try to run. Literally. More laughter. Lighter this time. Claire sat in the corner, reviewing charts on her tablet, but her ears worked fine. Yuki sat beside her, voice low. You really think it's his spleen? Claire didn't look up. I think something's not right. Based on what? Posture. Scar tissue. The way he's breathing. Yuki studied her. That's not stuff you learn from textbooks. No, it's not. So where'd you learn it? Claire finally looked up, met Yuki's curious gaze. Experience. Before Yuki could press further, the overhead PA crackled to life. Surgical team to OR3. Patient crashed during pre-op. Surgical team to OR3 immediately. Claire was moving before the announcement finished. The patient's name was Gerald Reeves, 53, insurance adjuster. Scheduled for what should have been a straightforward laparoscopic cholecystectomy at 2:30 that afternoon. He crashed at 2:47. Claire reached OR3 as the code team swarmed. She stayed outside the sterile field, pressed against the wall, crutch held tight. Through the controlled chaos, she could see monitors screaming, blood pressure dropping, a nurse doing compressions, while another prepped the intubation kit. Feldman arrived 30 seconds later, Moss right behind him. Talk to me, Feldman snapped, moving to scrub. The anesthesiologist, a gray-haired woman named Dr. Patel, kept her voice steady. BP crashed during induction, 60/30 and falling, pulse thready. He's not responding to fluids. Internal bleeding, Feldman said. He was already gowned, gloved. moving with the efficiency of 3 decades in trauma surgery. Get me in there now. They opened Gerald Reeves on the OR table. Emergency laparotomy. No time for the planned minimally invasive approach. Claire watched from the observation window above, fingers tight on the railing. Feldman's hands moved fast, confident. He was good. She could see that immediately. Technically proficient, decisive, the kind of surgeon who'd earned his reputation through skill, not politics. But he was looking in the wrong place. Gallbladders inflamed but intact, he said. No obvious perforation. Where's the bleeding coming from? Checking liver, Moss said, retracting. Looks clear. Kidneys? Can't see any damage. Claire's hands tightened on the railing. She could see it from here. The way the blood pooled, the color, the location. Left upper quadrant. Yuki had followed her to the observation deck. You see something? His spleen, Claire said quietly. It's his spleen. Feldman's the best trauma surgeon in the state. If it was the spleen, it's old trauma. Probably a capsular tear that sealed itself. The anesthesia dropped his blood pressure enough that it reopened. Claire's voice stayed level, clinical. He needs to check the splenic hilum, now. Below, Gerald Reeves's pressure continued dropping. 40/20. Feldman's voice carried through the intercom. I'm not seeing the source. Dr. Moss, more suction. We're missing something. Claire moved before she could think about it. Out of the observation deck, down the hall, through the scrub room door. Dr. Shepard, you can't... A nurse started. Claire ignored her. Pressed the intercom button. Dr. Feldman, check his spleen. Every head in the OR turned to look at the observation window, then located the source of the voice. Feldman's eyes, visible above his surgical mask, found her through the glass. Dr. Shepard, you are not authorized in this OR, and you are certainly not authorized to... He has an old splenic injury. Left upper quadrant. There's a scar on his abdomen consistent with blunt force trauma, probably 6 to 8 months old. The referred shoulder pain I mentioned this morning was Care's sign. His spleen has a capsular tear that's hemorrhaging. The ultrasound showed... Ultrasounds miss encapsulated splenic hematomas. You need to mobilize the spleen and check the hilum. Silence. Gerald Reeves's pressure dropped to 30/15. Feldman stared at her for another 3 seconds. Then he turned to Moss. Retract the stomach. I'm going in on the left side. His hands moved. Fast. Precise. He mobilized the spleen. Rotated it. Jesus, Moss breathed. Blood welled from a tear in the splenic capsule. A slow, steady leak that had been bleeding into the abdominal cavity since the blood pressure dropped. Active hemorrhage from capsular tear, Feldman said, voice tight. She was right. Suture. Now. They worked for 7 minutes. Tried to repair the tear. Couldn't get control. We're taking the spleen, Feldman said. Clamp the splenic artery. The splenectomy took another 23 minutes. Claire watched every second. Saw Feldman's technique, efficient and aggressive. Saw the moment the bleeding stopped. Saw Gerald Reeves's blood pressure slowly, impossibly slowly, begin to climb. 50/30, 60/30, 80/40. Feldman closed. His hands steady, but Claire could see the tension in his shoulders. When the last suture was placed, he stepped back from the table. Patients stable, moving to recovery. He stripped his gloves. Dr. Moss finished the closure. Then he walked out. Claire was waiting in the scrub room when he emerged. She'd moved there on instinct, knowing he'd come through, knowing there'd be a conversation. Feldman stopped when he saw her, pulled down his surgical mask. His face was unreadable. How did you know? The scar. The way he guarded his shoulder. The presentation. That's not enough for a diagnosis. It was enough to ask the question. Feldman moved to the sink, began washing his hands with methodical precision. You saved that man's life. You saved his life. I just pointed you in the right direction. Don't be modest, Dr. Shepard. It's not becoming. He dried his hands, turned to face her fully. That observation, that diagnostic leap. That's not first-year resident work. That's not even third-year resident work. Where did you train before you came here? Claire met his eyes. Steady. I studied hard. Nobody studies their way into that kind of pattern recognition. He stepped closer. Not threatening. Curious. What aren't you telling me? The door opened. Yuki entered, stopped when she saw them. Sorry, I can come back. No, it's fine. Feldman glanced at Claire once more. We'll continue this conversation later, Dr. Shepard. In my office. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. He left. Yuki waited until his footsteps faded. That was incredible. How did you see that from the observation deck? Training. What kind of training? Claire picked up her crutch from where she'd leaned it against the wall. The kind where you learn fast or people die. She left before Yuki could ask anything else. The resident lounge at 8 p.m. was quieter. A few doctors sprawled on couches, exhausted from the day. Claire sat in the corner, reviewing charts on her tablet, trying to focus on gallbladder pathology and not on the conversation waiting for her tomorrow morning. Moss entered with 2 other residents. He saw her, nudged the person beside him. Well, if it isn't our diagnostic genius. He grabbed a soda from the fridge, popped it open. Nice call on the spleen, Shepard. Lucky guess. Claire didn't look up. Thank you. No, I mean it. Really lucky. Because that kind of diagnosis usually comes from years of experience. And you've got what? 6 weeks as a surgical resident? He took a drink. Makes a person wonder. One of the other residents, a young man named Kumar, spoke up. Maybe she's just good at pattern recognition. Or maybe she's been watching a lot of surgical videos on YouTube. Moss laughed. I mean, good for her. Study hard, get lucky, save a life. That's the dream, right? Yuki entered, heard the tail end of the conversation. Nobody learns to read a patient like that from videos, Moss. Oh, so what's your theory, Tanaka? She's secretly been a surgeon for 20 years and just forgot to mention it? My theory is she knows what she's doing and you're jealous. Moss grinned. Jealous of the temp resident with the crutch? Sure, that's it. He left, the other residents following. Kumar lingered. For what it's worth, that was impressive today. Claire finally looked up. Just doing the job. That wasn't just doing the job. That was something else. He hesitated. Those sutures you were practicing yesterday in the skills lab. The interrupted mattress technique. That's military style, isn't it? Claire's expression didn't change. It's a common technique. Not in civilian hospitals. I only know it because my brother's an army medic. He showed me once. Kumar studied her. You prior service? I really need to finish these charts. Kumar nodded slowly. Right. Sure. Have a good night, Dr. Shepard. He left. Claire sat alone in the quiet lounge, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Her leg ached. Her head ached. Tomorrow morning she'd sit in Feldman's office and deflect questions she couldn't answer without unraveling everything she'd built. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard you're at Metropolitan now. Proud of you, Ghost. Stay safe. No signature. Didn't need one. Claire deleted the message, powered down her phone, and went back to her charts. Some ghosts didn't stay buried. They just waited for the right moment to surface. The meeting never happened. Claire arrived at Feldman's office at 6:55, prepared for interrogation. His secretary informed her the chief of surgery had been called into emergency consultation. Reschedule for next week. Reprieve. Temporary. But she'd take it. The morning started quiet. Rounds at 7:30, teaching conference at 9, scheduled surgeries filling the afternoon slate. Claire observed a hernia repair, then a thyroidectomy. Competent work. Textbook. Nothing that required her input. She was reviewing post-op notes in the resident workroom when her pager screamed. Trauma incoming. All available surgical staff report to ER. Mass casualty event. The words mass casualty pushed something cold through her chest. Muscle memory older than her civilian identity. Deeper than the persona she'd built. She moved. The emergency department had transformed into controlled chaos. Nurses running triage, residents gowning up. The peculiar electricity that comes when the ordinary world fractures and floods through the doors. Dr. Patel stood at the central station, coordinating. Construction crane collapse at the Riverside site. Multiple casualties. 6 criticals incoming. ETA 2 minutes. Feldman arrived, already in trauma gown. Department assignments. Moss, Taker 2. Tanaka, you're with him. Dr. Chen, or 3. Dr. Shepard. He paused, eyes landing on Claire, reassessing. Or 4. Least critical patient. Think you can handle that? Yes, sir. Good. Because if you can diagnose a ruptured spleen from an observation deck, I want to see what you can do with your hands. The ambulances arrived like thunder. Paramedics wheeling gurneys, voices sharp and urgent, the organized pandemonium of people trying to hold back death with protocols and pressure. First patient, mid-40s, crushing chest injury, probable pneumothorax. Second, early 20s, compound femur fracture, major arterial bleed. Third, teenager, head trauma, unresponsive. They kept coming. Claire's patient arrived last. Young man, mid-20s, conscious and alert. Right leg splinted, obvious deformity. The paramedic rattled off vitals as they rolled him into Trauma Bay 4. Patient is PFC Michael Torres, 23 years old. Sustained injury during training exercise at Camp Pendleton. Closed tibia fibula fracture, right leg, vitals stable. Pain controlled with morphine. Claire moved to the bedside, began her assessment. Checked circulation, sensation, movement. The leg was badly broken, but cleanly. No vascular compromise, no compartment syndrome developing. Straightforward orthopedic case. Except, she paused, looked at the fracture pattern again. The way the bone had broken. Not the clean snap of a fall or blunt impact. Something else. PFC Torres, how did this happen? He was young, Latino. Scared, but holding it together the way military teaches you. Training accident, ma'am. Explosion simulation went wrong. Explosion? Yes, ma'am. Claire pulled back the temporary dressing, looked at the skin. Saw what she'd suspected. Tiny puncture marks. Foreign debris embedded in the tissue. Pattern she'd seen 100 times. This isn't a training accident. Her voice stayed calm. Clinical. This is a fragmentation injury. Torres stared at her. What? The fracture pattern. The debris in the wound. This is combat trauma. Shrapnel fragmentation, probably from an improvised explosive device. She met his eyes. What really happened? His face changed. Fear shifting to confusion. How do you know what IED fragments look like? Claire didn't answer. Began cleaning the wound, removing debris with tweezers. Her hands moved with precision that came from somewhere other than medical school. Muscle memory. The kind you build when seconds matter and there's no room for hesitation. Torres watched her hands. Then his eyes widened. Ma'am, are you military? I need to set this fracture. That touch. The way you're moving. His voice dropped. Kandahar. Claire's hands stopped. Just for a second. Less than a heartbeat. But he saw it. You are. You're her. You're Ghost. PFC Torres. I need you to stay calm. Oh my God. He tried to sit up, winced. Commander Peterson talked about you. The SEAL medic who saved his team. I thought you were a legend. A story. Claire gently pushed him back down. You're confusing me with someone else. I'm a surgical resident. Now please, let me work. But her hands shook. Barely. Invisible to anyone who wasn't looking. Torres was looking. Your hands are shaking. He said quietly. You don't want anyone to know. I don't know what you're talking about. I won't tell anyone. His eyes, young and earnest and absolutely certain. But ma'am, thank you. For your service. Whatever brought you here. Whatever you're running from. You saved a lot of lives over there. Claire said nothing. Finished debriding the wound. Prepared for the fracture reduction. This is going to hurt, she said. I know. She reduced the fracture in one smooth motion. Torres gasped, but didn't scream. Military training. You learn to breathe through pain. The reduction was perfect. Textbook alignment. She splinted, wrapped, secured. You'll need surgery to pin this properly, she said. But you'll walk again, full recovery. Thank you, Doc. She turned to leave. He called after her. Ghost? She stopped. Didn't turn around. Whoever you're hiding from, I hope you find peace. Claire left the trauma bay, moved down the hall toward the scrub room, trying to control the tremor in her hands, that had nothing to do with fatigue. Behind her, through the open doorway of Trauma Bay 4, she heard Torres pull out his phone. "Hawk, it's Torres. You're not going to believe this, but I think I just found Ghost." The other trauma cases spiraled. The teenager with head trauma died before they could get him to CT. The woman with the crushing chest injury made it to OR 2, but her heart stopped on the table. Moss worked for 40 minutes. Couldn't bring her back. Feldman's patient survived. Barely. The man lost half his blood volume, but Feldman controlled the arterial bleed, transfused, stabilized. By midnight he was in ICU. Critical, but alive. The hospital felt heavy. The particular weight that settles after you've lost people. Claire sat in the resident lounge, still in her scrubs, legs screaming. She'd been on her feet for 6 hours straight. Stupid. She'd pay for it tomorrow. Yuki found her there. "Torres is asking for you." Claire looked up. "What?" "The soldier with the leg fracture. He's stable, waiting for orthopedic surgery in the morning. He asked if you could check on him. I'm not his primary surgeon." "I know, but he specifically asked for you." Yuki studied her. "He called you something." "Ghost. What does that mean?" Claire stood, grabbed her crutch. "It means nothing." "Claire, it means nothing." She went to Torres's room. He was alone, leg elevated, IV running clear fluids. He looked young in the hospital bed, too young to have seen what he'd seen. "You called for me?" "I wanted to apologize, ma'am, for earlier. I shouldn't have said anything." "It's fine. It's not fine. You're hiding for a reason. I respect that." He hesitated. "But I already texted Commander Peterson, before I realized you didn't want to be found. I'm sorry." Claire's chest went tight. "What did you tell him?" "That I thought I'd met you. That you were at Metropolitan General." He looked miserable. "I can text him again. Tell him I was wrong." "No." Claire's voice came out flat. "If you already sent it, the damage is done. I really am sorry." She nodded, left without another word. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, eyes closed, breathed, counted to 10, tried to push back the tide of something that felt like panic, but couldn't be, because she didn't panic anymore. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Got an interesting call tonight. Metropolitan General." "Really, Claire?" She powered off the phone. Across the hospital, in OR 3, Feldman finished his notes on the arterial repair, sat back, thought about the surgical resident with the limp who'd diagnosed a splenic rupture from an observation deck and reduced a complex fracture like she'd done it 1,000 times. He opened his computer, typed her name into the staff database, found her file. Minimal information. Medical degree from state school. No military service listed. No prior surgical residencies. Nothing that explained her skills. He pulled up the surgical video from Torres's fracture reduction. Watched her hands. The way she moved. Economical. Precise. Combat efficient. He'd seen that efficiency before. Years ago. Guest lecture from a military surgeon. Different context. Same signature. Feldman opened a different database. Made a phone call to a colleague at Walter Reed. Asked a quiet question. Got a very interesting answer. Wednesday arrived with rain and the particular exhaustion that comes from not sleeping. Claire had spent the night replaying Torres's words, the text message, the certainty that her carefully constructed distance was collapsing. She arrived at the hospital at 6 a.m. Rounds started at 7:30. She had 90 minutes to review charts, check labs, pretend everything was normal. The overnight resident looked half dead when Claire found her in the workroom. "Anything I should know about?" Claire asked. "Quiet night, thank God. Torres is scheduled for OR at 10. Reeves is doing well post-splenectomy. The trauma cases from yesterday are stable except for the one in ICU. Still critical, but holding." She rubbed her eyes. "Oh, and Dr. Feldman wants to see you. Left a note." Claire's stomach dropped. "When?" "Didn't say. Just said to find him when you got in." She found him in his office, door open, reviewing surgery schedules on dual monitors. He looked up when she knocked. "Dr. Shepard, come in." "Close the door." She did. Stood in front of his desk, weight on her right leg, crutch held firm. Feldman leaned back in his chair, studied her with the same clinical assessment he'd given her the first day. But different now. Sharper. "I made some calls yesterday," he said, "to a colleague at Walter Reed. Asked about surgical techniques I've been observing. Specifically, interrupted mattress sutures and triage efficiency patterns consistent with combat medicine." Claire said nothing. "He told me something interesting. Said those techniques are signature to Special Operations medical officers, SEALs, Rangers, Special Forces. The kind of surgeons who operate in field conditions where perfect is the enemy of fast enough." Feldman paused. He also mentioned that most combat surgeons who transition to civilian medicine don't hide their service. They leverage it. Except for a very specific few who have reasons to disappear. "Dr. Feldman, I'm not asking you to confess anything, Dr. Shepard. I'm telling you what I see. 6 weeks into residency, you're performing at a senior level. You diagnose conditions from minimal presentation. Your hands move like you've done this for years, not months. And yesterday, you identified fragmentation patterns that most civilian trauma surgeons wouldn't recognize." The rain drummed against the window. Claire kept her breathing steady. "Where did you really train?" he asked quietly. Before she could answer, the overhead PA crackled to life. "Trauma alert. All available surgical staff to emergency department. Multiple casualties incoming. Repeat. Trauma alert." Feldman stood. "We'll finish this later." They moved. The emergency department was already mobilizing when they arrived. Dr. Patel coordinating again. Voice sharp over the organized chaos. Multi-vehicle collision on the interstate. 6 vehicles involved. We've got 4 criticals coming in hot. ETA 3 minutes. 2 are pediatric. The words pediatric changed the air. Everyone moved faster. Feldman began assigning teams. "Moss, take the first adult trauma. Chen, second adult. Tanaka, you're with me on the first pediatric." "Sir," Claire's voice cut through. "I can take one." Feldman turned, looked at her. Something passed across his face. Decision made in the space between heartbeats. "You take the least critical adult. Trauma Bay 4 again. Show me what you can do." The ambulances arrived. Sirens, controlled urgency. Paramedics wheeling patients through doors that stayed open, letting in rain and wind and the metallic smell of blood. First patient. Woman, 30s, steering wheel impact, probable cardiac contusion. Second. Man, 50s, ejected from vehicle, multiple fractures, internal bleeding. Third. Child, 8 years old, unconscious, head trauma. Fourth. Teenager, 16, chest trauma, difficulty breathing. Claire's patient came last. Male, late 30s, conscious but pale. The paramedic ran through vitals as they moved him into the bay. Patient is Commander James Peterson, 38 years old. Military, active duty. Sustained blunt chest trauma during vehicle collision. Possible rib fractures. Probable pneumothorax. BP 90/60. Heart rate 130. Oxygen saturation dropping. Claire froze. The world narrowed. Sound became distant. She stared at the man on the gurney, and 5 years collapsed into nothing. Hawk, Commander James Peterson. SEAL Team 3. Kandahar, 2019. The operation that ended everything. The man she'd carried 300 yards with a broken leg while taking fire. One of the 11 she'd saved. One of the reasons she limped. He was unconscious now. Didn't see her, but she saw him. Saw the scar on his neck from the tracheotomy she'd performed with a ballpoint pen and a pocket knife. Saw the way his chest moved, the familiar pattern of tension pneumothorax building. "Dr. Shepard?" A nurse's voice. "Doctor, we need you." Claire couldn't move. Her hands, steady through everything, shook now. Visible. Obvious. Yuki appeared beside her. "Claire, what's wrong?" "I can't." The words came out broken. "I can't do this." "What do you mean you can't?" Feldman's voice cut across the bay. "Dr. Shepard, that patient is decompensating. Either treat him or get out of the way." Peterson's oxygen saturation dropped to 85, then 80. His lips were turning blue. Claire looked at Feldman. Saw the challenge in his eyes. The test. The moment where she either broke or became something else. She thought of Kandahar, The explosion. The children she couldn't reach. The weight of Peterson's body as she dragged him to the extraction point. The way her leg shattered when the second IED detonated. The 11 lives saved. The 3 lost. The guilt that never left. Dr. Shepard. Feldman's voice, harder now. Decide. Claire closed her eyes. Breathed once. Twice. Pushed everything into the room where pain lived, locked the door, and opened her eyes. Everyone not essential, step back, she said. Her voice was different. Command tone. The one that came from somewhere deeper than medical school. Yuki, you're with me. I need a 14-gauge needle, chest tube kit, and someone get me his chest x-ray now. She moved to Peterson's bedside. Put her hand on his chest. Felt the asymmetry. Left side barely moving. Tracheal deviation to the right. Classic tension. Pneumothorax. No time for x-ray, she said. He's got a tension pneumothorax left side. If I don't decompress now, he's going to arrest. Feldman had moved closer, watching. You're certain? Completely. Then do it. Claire took the needle from Yuki's hand. Located the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. No hesitation. She pushed the needle through skin, muscle, pleura. A hiss of air under pressure. Peterson's oxygen saturation immediately began climbing. 82, 85, 88. Tension released, Claire said. Yuki, prep for chest tube insertion. He's going to need surgical stabilization. She worked fast, efficient. Placed the chest tube in 4 minutes. Secured it. Connected suction. Peterson's breathing eased, color returning to his face. Feldman watched every movement. That was textbook decompression, he said quietly. Where did you learn to move that fast? Claire didn't answer. She was staring at Peterson's face, watching him breathe, remembering another time she'd fought to keep this man alive. His eyes fluttered open. Unfocused at first, then sharpening. They landed on Claire's face. Recognition hit like a shockwave. Ghost. His voice was rough, barely a whisper. That you? Every person in the trauma bay heard it. Feldman's eyes went wide. Yuki stared. The nurses exchanged glances. Claire leaned close, voice low. Stay still, Commander. You're going to be fine. I knew Torres wasn't seeing things. Peterson tried to smile, grimaced in pain. Damn, it's good to see you. Thought you disappeared. I did. Why? Claire didn't answer. Turned to Feldman. He needs surgery. Probable rib fractures. Possible pulmonary contusion. The tube will hold him for now, but he needs a thoracic surgeon to evaluate. Feldman nodded slowly. I'll take him. Or 30 minutes. He paused. You're scrubbing in with me. Sir, I don't think... That wasn't a request, Dr. Shepard. His voice was steel. You just saved this man's life with a technique that most residents couldn't perform under ideal conditions, let alone in a trauma bay under pressure. You're scrubbing in. I want to see what you really are. Claire met his eyes. Saw the challenge. The demand for truth. Yes, sir. Peterson reached out, caught her wrist. His grip weak but insistent. Claire, whatever you're running from, you don't have to run anymore. She gently removed his hand. Rest, Commander. We'll talk after surgery. She left the trauma bay, Feldman following. In the hallway, he stopped her. Ghost, he said. That's what he called you. Claire said nothing. Lieutenant Commander Claire Shepard. Feldman's voice was quiet. Navy SEAL combat surgeon. 3 tours. That's who you are, isn't it? The truth hung between them like smoke. Claire looked at him. Saw the understanding in his eyes. The respect mixing with anger at the deception. Yes, she said finally. That's who I was. Then let's see if she can still operate. The scrub room was silent except for running water. Claire stood at the sink, hands moving through the ritual of surgical prep. 7 minutes. Nails, fingers, palms, wrists, forearms. Methodical, automatic. Feldman scrubbed beside her. How long? He asked. Sir? How long have you been hiding? Claire kept her eyes on her hands. Watched the water run clear. 5 years. Since Kandahar. Why? Because I was done. Because I lost people I should have saved. Because every time I closed my eyes I saw their faces. She paused. because I wanted to learn medicine without the weight of war attached to it. So you started over. First-year resident. Pretended you'd never operated before. Yes. Feldman finished scrubbing, turned off the water with his elbow. That's either the most humble thing I've ever heard or the most cowardly. Claire looked at him then. Maybe both. The man in that OR right now, Commander Peterson. You saved his life before, didn't you? In Kandahar, IED attack during a civilian evacuation. He was critically wounded. I got him out. And your leg? Same attack. Second IED detonated while I was carrying him to the extraction point. Tibial plateau fracture. Nerve damage. 11 people survived that day because I didn't stop moving. Her voice went quiet. 3 children died because I couldn't reach them in time. Because my leg was shattered, and I couldn't run fast enough. Feldman was silent for a long moment. That's why you left. That's why I left. Claire. He used her first name. She looked up. Those children, that wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? No, it was war. War doesn't care about fair or unfair. It just takes. He held her gaze. But that man in there, he's alive because of you. Torres is going to walk because of you. Gerald Reeves is home with his family because you saw what I missed. You've been hiding, but you've been saving lives the entire time. Claire felt something crack in her chest. I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you do. You already are. Feldman moved toward the OR doors. Now come on, let's go save your friend. They entered OR 2. Peterson was already under anesthesia, intubated, chest prepped and draped. The surgical team looked up as they entered. Yuki was there, gowned and ready. 2 surgical nurses. An anesthesiologist monitoring vitals. Everyone stared at Claire. Word had spread. The resident with the limp wasn't who they thought. Claire moved to the table, looked down at Peterson's face, peaceful in unconsciousness. Remembered the last time she'd seen him like this, bleeding out on Afghan soil, begging her to leave him and save herself. She hadn't left him then. Wouldn't now. Scalpel, she said. Feldman handed it to her. You're taking lead. If you'll let me. Show me what a combat surgeon can do, Lieutenant Commander. Claire made the first incision. Clean. Precise. No hesitation. Opened the chest cavity. Extended the thoracotomy. Her hands moved like they remembered this dance, like the 5 years hadn't happened. Rib fractures, 3 through 7 on the left side, she narrated. Segments are displaced, causing pulmonary laceration. Small hemothorax, approximately 200 milliliters. The lung is re-expanding now that we have the tube in place. Feldman watched her hands. Your technique is different from what we teach here. Combat medicine. You don't have time for perfect. You need fast and functional. She irrigated the chest cavity, suctioned blood. But it works. I can see that. Yuki assisted, passing instruments before Claire asked. She'd fallen into the rhythm, trusting Claire's movements. How many of these have you done? Yuki asked quietly. Claire paused, counting in her head. Thoracotomies? Maybe 200. Field conditions, mostly. Shrapnel wounds, blast injuries, gunshots. You learn fast when there's no backup and no second chances. 200. Yuki's voice carried awe. I've assisted on 12. You'll get there. Just hope you do it somewhere with better lighting and less incoming fire. Despite the tension, someone laughed. The OR relaxed slightly. Claire stabilized the rib fractures with plates, repaired the pulmonary laceration with interrupted sutures. Her hands didn't shake, didn't hesitate. This was the part of her that worked, the part that made sense, the part where she could save people instead of losing them. Lung is intact, she said. No active bleeding. Chest tube is functioning well. He'll need ICU monitoring for 48 hours, but prognosis is excellent. She began closing. Layer by layer. Muscle, fascia, subcutaneous tissue, skin. The ritual of putting someone back together. Feldman had been silent for the last 10 minutes. Just watching. Now he spoke. That was remarkable, Claire. I've been a trauma surgeon for 28 years. I've never seen surgical precision like that. You learn precision when mistakes cost lives. No. Feldman's voice was firm. Plenty of surgeons work in high-stakes environments. That's not precision. That's mastery. That's someone who's done this so many times it's become instinct. Claire finished the last suture, stepped back, looked at Peterson's chest rising and falling steadily. "He's stable," she said. "Ready for recovery." The anesthesiologist nodded. "Vitals are strong. He's going to be fine." Claire stripped her gloves, her gown, walked out of the OR without another word. Feldman found her in the scrub room, sitting on the floor, back against the wall, head in her hands. Not crying, just breathing, trying to hold together the pieces that had come apart. He sat beside her, didn't speak, just waited. "I carried him 300 yards, Claire said finally. "My leg was broken. I could feel the bones grinding with every step. But I didn't stop, couldn't stop, because if I stopped, he died. So I kept moving. Got him to the extraction point, went back for others. That's when the second IED went off." "How many did you save that day?" 11. 8 SEALs, 3 Afghan civilians working with us, and the 3 children. They were in a building that collapsed. I tried to reach them, but my leg, I couldn't, I wasn't fast enough." Her voice cracked. "I heard them calling for help. I heard them die." Feldman was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his phone, opened a file, handed it to her. "I made another call this morning, to a friend at JSOC. Asked about Kandahar, 2019. About you." Claire looked at the screen, a declassified after-action report. She scanned it, then stopped. "What is this?" "Read it." She read. The words blurred, came into focus, blurred again. The building collapse was not caused by structural failure. Intelligence indicates secondary explosive devices were placed by hostile forces specifically to target rescue personnel. Lieutenant Commander Shepard's inability to reach the civilian casualties was due to enemy action, not medical failure. Her action saved 11 lives under sustained enemy fire. Recommended for Navy Cross. Claire stared at the screen. They knew. Command knew the building was rigged? Yes, and they didn't tell you because it was classified. You've been carrying guilt for 5 years over something that was never your fault. The words hit like a physical blow. 5 years of nightmares. 5 years of limping through a life she'd built on the foundation of failure. 5 years of hiding from a truth that was a lie. "I didn't fail them," she whispered. "No, you didn't. You were betrayed by bad intelligence and a command structure that prioritized secrecy over your mental health." Feldman took the phone back. "You're not a failure, Claire. You're a survivor. And you're one hell of a surgeon." Claire closed her eyes, felt something release in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But space. Room to breathe. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now? Now you stop hiding." Feldman stood, offered his hand. She took it, let him pull her to her feet. "Peterson is going to wake up in a few hours. He's going to tell everyone who you are. The staff already knows something's different. You can't go back to being invisible. I don't know if I can do this, Marcus." "Yes, you can. Because you already have." He headed for the door, paused. "Come to my office in an hour. We need to talk about your future here." He left. Claire stood alone in the scrub room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Saw the woman she'd been trying to hide. The surgeon. The SEAL. The person who carried people to safety, even when her own body was breaking. Ghost. Maybe it was time to stop haunting her own life. Claire didn't go to Feldman's office in an hour. She went to the ICU instead. Peterson was awake, groggy, oxygen mask in place, but conscious and alert enough to recognize her when she entered his room. His eyes tracked her movement from the door to his bedside. "Ghost," he said, voice muffled by the mask. "You actually came. Checking on my patient, Commander. Cut the formal crap. It's Hawk. Always has been." He tried to shift, grimaced. "How bad?" 3 fractured ribs, pulmonary laceration, hemothorax. We plated the ribs, repaired the lung. You'll be sore for weeks, but full recovery expected." She checked his vitals on the monitor. "You got lucky." "Lucky." He laughed, then winced. "I got hit by a drunk driver doing 90 on the interstate, then woke up to find out the surgeon who saved my life 5 years ago is pretending to be a first-year resident." That's not luck. That's cosmic irony. How did you even end up here? Camp Pendleton is 2 hours south. Training exercise at the naval base north of the city. Wrong place, wrong time. He pulled down his oxygen mask. Claire, why are you hiding? I'm not hiding. You're a first-year resident with more combat surgery experience than most trauma attendings will see in their entire careers. That's hiding. His eyes, sharp despite the pain medication, studied her. What happened after Kandahar? Claire looked away. I got medical retirement. The leg, nerve damage made me non-deployable. So you started over. I wanted to learn civilian medicine. Trauma without war attached to it. That's not the whole truth. She met his eyes. No, it's not. Hawk waited. Patient. The same way he'd waited in that Afghan compound while she'd worked on him with limited supplies and enemy fire coming through the walls. I lost 3 children that day, Claire said finally. The building collapsed. I couldn't reach them. My leg was broken and I was too slow and they died while I listened. That wasn't on you. It felt like it was. Feelings lie, Doc. Facts don't. Fact is, you saved 11 lives that day. Fact is, you carried me 300 yards with a shattered leg while taking fire. Fact is, you're the reason I'm alive to have this conversation. He reached out, caught her wrist. You don't get to carry guilt for something you couldn't control. I won't let you. Before Claire could respond, the ICU door opened. Yuki entered, stopped when she saw them. Sorry, I can check back. It's fine, Claire said. I was just leaving. Actually, Dr. Shepard, Dr. Feldman sent me to find you. He needs you in his office. Yuki glanced at Hawk, curiosity clear on her face. And apparently there are some people in the lobby asking for Lieutenant Commander Shepard. Security wasn't sure what to do with them. Hawk grinned despite his pain. Oh, that's probably the team. I might have made some calls before the surgery. Claire's stomach dropped. What team? My team. The guys you saved in Kandahar. Torres told them you were here. Word spreads fast in the community, Doc. Hawk, no. Too late. They're already here. His grin widened. You can hide from yourself, Claire. But you can't hide from the people who owe you their lives. Claire left the ICU, Yuki following close behind. In the hallway, Yuki caught her arm. Claire, what's happening? Who are these people? My past catching up. Your past is apparently full of Navy SEALs who think you're a legend. Claire stopped walking. Turned to face Yuki. I was a combat surgeon. SEAL Team 3 medical officer. 3 tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. I saved some people. Lost some others. Got injured. Came home. Started over. She paused. That's the short version. Yuki stared. The short version. Right. And the long version? The long version is why I limp and why I have nightmares and why I've been pretending to be someone I'm not for 5 years. Claire's voice was flat. Factual. Now I need to go see Feldman and figure out what happens next. She started walking again. Yuki kept pace. For what it's worth, Yuki said quietly. Everyone in that OR today saw something incredible. Whatever you were before, whatever you're trying to hide from, you're an extraordinary surgeon. That doesn't change. Claire said nothing. But something in her chest loosened slightly. Feldman's office door was open. He sat at his desk, but he wasn't alone. 2 men in Navy dress uniforms stood near the window. They turned when Claire entered. She recognized them immediately. Lieutenant Mason and Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez. Kandahar, part of the 11. Lieutenant Commander Shepard, Mason said. His voice carried the same respect it had 5 years ago. In a different desert. In a different life. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Claire's throat went tight. Granted. We heard you were here. The whole team. We wanted to come personally and say what we should have said 5 years ago. He stood at attention. Thank you for our lives. Rodriguez stepped forward. Older, graying at the temples, a scar visible above his collar. Ma'am, I have 2 daughters now, 6 and 4. They exist because you didn't give up on me when I'd given up on myself. I owe you everything. Claire couldn't speak, couldn't move. Feldman spoke into the silence. Gentlemen, would you mind giving us a moment? You can wait in the conference room down the hall. They left. Mason paused at the door, looked back at Claire. "We're not leaving until we've properly thanked you, ma'am. The whole team is downstairs. 8 of us. We're here as long as it takes." The door closed. Claire stood frozen. Feldman gestured to a chair. "Sit." She sat. Felt the weight of her leg, the familiar ache, the permanent reminder of that day. 8 Navy SEALs in full dress uniform are currently in my hospital lobby, Feldman said. "They're asking for you. The staff is confused. Patients are taking pictures. This is not subtle, Claire. I didn't ask them to come. I know. But they're here, and they're not leaving until they see you." He leaned forward. "Here's what I think. I think you've been running from recognition because recognition means acknowledging what you lost. But these men, they're not here to remind you of loss. They're here to remind you of what you saved. I don't need reminding. Yes, you do. Because you've been living like a ghost for 5 years, and ghosts don't save lives. Surgeons do." He pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. "That's a modified residency contract. Senior surgical resident, trauma specialty, full OR privileges, teaching responsibilities. And I want you to establish a combat to civilian medical transition program for veterans entering healthcare." Claire opened the folder, scanned the terms, looked up. "Why?" "Because you're wasting your talent pretending to be less than you are. Because this hospital needs what you know. Because those men downstairs need to know their sacrifice meant something." Feldman's voice softened. "And because you need to stop punishing yourself for surviving." Claire stared at the contract, saw her name, saw the title, Senior Surgical Resident, Trauma Specialist, Combat Medicine Integration. "I don't know if I can do this." "Stop saying that. You've been doing it. You just haven't been owning it." Feldman stood. "Those men are waiting. Go down there. Let them thank you. Let yourself be seen. Then come back up here and sign that contract." Claire stood slowly, using her crutch for support. Her leg screamed. She ignored it. "And if I say no, then you go back to hiding. Keep pretending. Keep running." Feldman met her eyes. "But I don't think you will. Because the woman who carried a wounded SEAL 300 yards with a broken leg doesn't run. She fights." Claire left his office, took the elevator down to the lobby. The doors opened and she saw them. 8 Navy SEALs in dress blue uniforms, standing at attention in the center of the hospital lobby. Patients, visitors, staff, everyone had stopped to watch. Commander Peterson was there too, in a wheelchair, hospital gown under a blanket, IV pole attached. Someone had wheeled him down against medical advice. Torres stood beside him, leg in a cast, leaning on crutches. When Claire stepped out of the elevator, Mason called out, "Attention!" All 8 snapped to attention simultaneously. The sound of their boots hitting the floor in unison echoed through the lobby. Claire limped forward, crutch tapping against tile. Every eye in the lobby was on her. Hawk spoke from his wheelchair. "Lieutenant Commander Claire Shepard, we, the members of SEAL Team 3, hereby recognize your actions on October 14th, 2019, in Kandahar Province, Afghanistan. You saved 11 lives under sustained enemy fire while critically wounded. You embodied the SEAL ethos. Never quit, never leave a fallen comrade." Mason stepped forward, holding something. A shadow box frame. Inside, mounted on blue velvet, was a Navy Cross medal. "This was awarded to you in absentia," he said. "You never showed up to claim it. Command shipped it to your last known address. It came back undeliverable." He held it out. "We've been carrying it for 5 years, waiting for the chance to give it to you personally." Claire stared at the medal. The bronze cross. The ribbon. The citation underneath listing her actions that day. "I can't accept that." "Yes, you can," Hawk said. "Because you earned it. Because it's yours. Because we need you to understand that what you did mattered." Rodriguez stepped forward, pulled out his phone, showed her a picture. 2 little girls, blonde hair, bright smiles. "Sophia and Emma. They call me Daddy because you gave me a future." His voice broke. "Please, let us thank you." Claire's vision blurred. She tried to speak, couldn't. Mason placed the shadow box in her hands. Then, As one, all 8 SEALs saluted. The lobby went absolutely silent. Claire stood there, holding the medal, tears streaming down her face, and slowly, shakily, returned the salute. The silence held for another moment. Then someone started clapping. A nurse, then another, then a patient. Then the entire lobby erupted in applause. Claire stood in the center of it all, surrounded by the men she'd saved, holding a medal she'd never wanted, finally allowing herself to be seen. Feldman watched from the second-floor balcony, arms crossed, a small smile on his face. Ghost had finally come home. The hospital conference room felt too small for 8 Navy SEALs, but they made it work. Claire sat at the head of the table, the shadow box with her Navy cross beside her, still trying to process what had just happened in the lobby. Hawk had been wheeled back to ICU under protest. Torres remained, cast propped on a chair, grinning like he'd just won a personal victory. Mason sat to Claire's right. "We've been looking for you for 3 years, ma'am. After you stopped responding to messages, stopped showing up to veteran events, just vanished. We thought maybe you'd died, and no one told us. I didn't die. I just stopped being that person. You can't stop being who you are," Rodriguez said. "We tried to respect your privacy. But when Torres called, when we knew where you were, we had to come. Had to make sure you knew. Knew what? That you matter. That what you did matters. That we're alive and whole and building families because you refused to quit." Mason leaned forward. "Ma'am, with respect, you've been hiding from the wrong thing. You think you're running from failure, but you're really running from the fact that you're a hero. And heroes make other people uncomfortable because they show us what we could be if we were braver." Claire shook her head. "I'm not a hero. I'm a surgeon who did her job. Under enemy fire, with a broken leg, for 11 hours straight." Rodriguez pulled out a folder. "We brought something else. The full after-action report from Kandahar. The classified parts that you never got to see." He slid it across the table. Claire opened it, began reading. Her hands started shaking halfway through the first page. The intelligence failure was deliberate. Command had received warning that the compound was rigged with secondary explosives, but chose not to abort the mission due to high-value target considerations. Lieutenant Commander Shepard was not informed of the additional risk. Her actions prevented total loss of the team. The 3 civilian casualties were unavoidable. Building collapse was triggered remotely by enemy forces specifically to target medical personnel. Claire read it twice. 3 times. The words didn't change. "They knew," she whispered. "Command knew the building was rigged and sent us anyway." "Yes, ma'am. And they kept it classified to avoid the scandal. You were medically retired before the investigation concluded. You never saw the final report." Mason's voice was hard. "You've been carrying guilt for a command decision that had nothing to do with your medical care. Those children died because someone in command valued a target over civilian lives. Not because you weren't fast enough." The room blurred. Claire pressed her palms against the table, trying to ground herself. 5 years. 5 years of nightmares. 5 years of hearing those children's voices. 5 years of believing she'd failed. And it was never her fault. Why didn't anyone tell me? They should have. But once you disappeared, there was no way to reach you. We tried. Command tried, but you'd gone dark. Rodriguez's voice softened. "We understand why. We just wish you'd known the truth sooner." Torres spoke up from his corner. "Ma'am, if I can say something, what you did for me yesterday reducing that fracture, that wasn't just good medicine. That was you seeing something wrong and fixing it. No hesitation, no second guessing. That's who you are. The person who fixes what's broken. You can't hide from that." Claire couldn't speak. Couldn't think. The foundation of 5 years had just cracked open, and she didn't know what was underneath. A knock at the door. Feldman entered without waiting for permission. "Gentlemen, I'm going to need to borrow Dr. Shepard." He looked at Claire. "We have a situation. Your choice whether to be involved, but I think you should hear this." Claire stood, grateful for the interruption. "What situation?" "Dr. Moss just made a formal complaint to the board. He's arguing that you fraudulently obtained your residency position by concealing your prior military surgical experience. He wants you removed from the program." The SEALs stood as one, tension filling the room. Mason's voice went cold. On what grounds? On the grounds that she misrepresented her qualifications. Feldman held up a hand. "Before anyone considers violence, let me be clear. The board is meeting in 20 minutes. Dr. Shepard has the right to respond. I'd like her to do so, but it's her choice." Claire looked at the 8 men surrounding her. Men she'd saved. Men who'd spent 3 years looking for her. Men who'd brought her a medal she'd never claimed, and a truth she desperately needed. Then she looked at Feldman. Saw the challenge in his eyes. The same challenge he'd given her in the trauma bay. "Decide who you are." "I'll be there," she said. The boardroom was on the 4th floor, all dark wood and uncomfortable chairs designed to make people confess things. 5 board members sat at a curved table. Moss stood to one side, Yuki on the other. Hospital legal counsel sat in the corner, looking bored. Claire entered with Feldman, took a seat facing the board. Her leg throbbed. She ignored it. Dr. Patricia Chen, chief medical officer and board chair, spoke first. "Dr. Shepard, we've received a formal complaint regarding your residency application. Specifically that you failed to disclose prior surgical experience equivalent to or exceeding that of a senior resident. Can you respond to this allegation?" Claire met her eyes. "It's true. I have prior experience. Significant prior experience." Moss leaned forward. She admitted it. She lied on her application. "This is grounds for immediate dismissal." "I didn't lie," Claire said quietly. "My application stated I had no prior civilian surgical residency experience. That was accurate. I disclosed my military service on page 3 of my medical clearance forms. What I didn't do was announce that I'd performed over 800 combat surgeries, because I wanted to learn civilian medicine without the weight of that experience defining me." "That's a semantic argument," Moss said. "You deliberately misled. I disclosed everything required by law. What I didn't do was volunteer information that wasn't requested." Claire's voice stayed level. "If the application had asked specifically about military surgical experience, I would have provided it. It didn't." Board member Dr. James Liu spoke up. "Dr. Shepard, why hide your experience? Most physicians would leverage combat surgical training." Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she rolled up her left sleeve, exposing the burn scars and the tattoo underneath. The sealed trident intertwined with the medical caduceus. "Because every time someone found out, they treated me differently. I became the combat surgeon instead of just a surgeon. I became a story instead of a person. I wanted to learn without that weight, without people expecting me to be something I wasn't sure I could be anymore." She paused. "I wanted to be normal, to prove I could do this without war attached to it. And in doing so, you took a position from someone who actually needed the training," Moss said. "Someone without 800 surgeries already under their belt." "No," Feldman stood. "She took a position and used it to save lives that would have been lost. Gerald Reeves would be dead if Dr. Shepard hadn't recognized his splenic rupture. Commander Peterson would have arrested in the trauma bay if she hadn't performed emergency decompression. She's identified pathology, prevented complications, and demonstrated surgical excellence that has elevated the entire department." "That's not the point," Moss said. "The point is honesty, integrity. She lied. She survived." The voice came from the doorway. Mason stood there, still in dress uniform, the other 7 SEALs behind him. "She survived a war that tried to kill her, came home with a broken body and broken spirit, and tried to rebuild herself into something that didn't hurt every time she closed her eyes. And you're upset that she didn't brag about it on a form?" Dr. Chen looked startled. "Sir, this is a closed board meeting. I'm Lieutenant Marcus Mason, U.S. Navy SEALs. This woman saved my life, saved all our lives. And I'll be damned if I'm going to stand outside while someone tries to destroy her for having the audacity to want a normal life after everything she gave up." He stepped into the room. "You want to talk about integrity? She carried me 300 yards with a shattered leg while taking enemy fire. She operated for 11 hours straight with minimal supplies and no backup. She has a Navy Cross she never claimed because she doesn't think she deserves it. That's integrity." Rodriguez stepped forward. "I have 2 daughters because of her. My wife has a husband. My parents have a son. All because Dr. Shepard decided our lives were worth more than her own safety. Torres hobbled in on his crutches. She identified my combat injury instantly, treated me with respect and skill, and never once tried to leverage it for recognition. She just did the work. That's who she is. The board sat in stunned silence. Dr. Chen recovered first. Gentlemen, while we appreciate your testimony, this is an administrative matter. No. Yuki spoke up from the side of the room. It's not. This is about whether we're going to punish someone for being extraordinary instead of celebrating it. Dr. Shepard is the best surgeon I've ever worked with. She's humble, skilled, and dedicated. If we dismiss her for not bragging about her qualifications, we're telling every veteran in medicine that their service doesn't matter unless they weaponize it for advancement. Feldman nodded. Dr. Shepard disclosed what was required. She's performed at an exceptional level. She's saved lives. If the board chooses to dismiss her, I'll resign in protest, and I suspect I won't be alone. Dr. Liu looked at Moss. Dr. Moss, what outcome are you seeking here? Moss hesitated. Looked at Claire, at the SEALs, at Feldman. His expression shifted. Something that might have been shame crossed his face. I wanted accountability, he said finally. I thought she was taking advantage. But maybe I was wrong about her motivations. Maybe you were jealous, Yuki said quietly. Because she's better than you'll ever be. The room went silent. Dr. Chen cleared her throat. The board will deliberate. Everyone except board members, please exit. They filed out. Claire last. In the hallway, Mason caught her arm. Whatever they decide, you're not alone. I know. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Dr. Chen gestured Claire back inside. Dr. Shepard, the board has reached a decision. You will not be dismissed. However, we are restructuring your position. Effective immediately, you're promoted to senior surgical resident with full teaching privileges. Additionally, we're creating a new program for combat to civilian medical transition, and we'd like you to direct it. Claire stared. What? We need what you know. And more importantly, other veterans need to know they can come here and be valued for their experience. Dr. Chen almost smiled. Don't hide anymore, Dr. Shepard. Lead. 6 months later, the teaching amphitheater was full. Claire stood at the podium, her crutch leaning against the desk beside her. She didn't hide it anymore. Didn't hide anything anymore. 40 residents filled the seats. A mix of civilian-trained doctors and military veterans, making the transition she'd once struggled through alone. The Navy Cross hung on the wall behind her, mounted in its shadow box. She'd resisted displaying it at first, but Feldman had insisted, said it mattered, said people needed to see that excellence came with scars. Combat Casualty Care, Week 12. Claire began. Today we're discussing damage control surgery. The principle is simple. You can't fix everything in the field, so you fix what will kill them in the next hour and get them to definitive care. Civilians think this is crude medicine. They're wrong. It's medicine stripped to its essential truth. Sometimes good enough and alive beats perfect and dead. A hand went up. Young resident, 2nd year, named Dr. Sarah Kim. Dr. Shepard, how do you decide what to fix and what to leave? ABC, airway, breathing, circulation, in that order. Always. If they can't breathe, nothing else matters. If they're bleeding out, brilliant surgery on a secondary injury is irrelevant. You prioritize based on what kills fastest. Claire moved out from behind the podium, her limp pronounced after 2 hours of standing, but her voice steady. In civilian trauma, you have labs, imaging, consultations. In combat, you have your hands and your brain. That's it. So you learn to read a body like a text. Color, temperature, pulse quality, breathing pattern. Those tell you everything if you know how to listen. Another hand. An older resident, late 30s, military bearing obvious even in civilian clothes. Captain David Park, Army, former combat medic. Ma'am, I've been struggling with the transition. Civilian attendings want extensive documentation, multiple sign-offs, committee approvals for procedures I used to do in a tent under fire. How do you balance knowing you can do something with respecting a system that doesn't trust that knowledge? Claire smiled. She'd been waiting for this question. Got it in every class. You document everything. You follow every protocol. You respect the hierarchy because civilian medicine has those safeguards for good reasons. But when someone's dying and you're the only one who can save them, you do what needs to be done and apologize later. She paused. The key is knowing the difference between I can do this and I must do this. Ego says the first, ethics says the second. Always choose ethics. Park nodded slowly. Even if it means watching someone die because you waited for permission? No. If someone's dying and you can save them, you act. Full stop. Then you face the consequences. But most situations aren't that binary. Most times you have seconds to think. Use them. The military taught you to act fast. Civilian medicine teaches you to think carefully. You need both. The lecture continued for another 40 minutes. Pneumothorax decompression, hemorrhage control, field amputation decision trees. Claire taught the same techniques she'd used in 3 tours, adapted for civilian context, refined by 6 months of teaching residents who needed to understand that their combat experience wasn't a liability. It was a gift. After class, Park approached the podium. Dr. Shepard, can I talk to you? Privately? They walked to her office. Small space, barely enough room for a desk and 2 chairs, but it was hers. The Navy Cross hung on one wall. On another, a photo of SEAL Team 3, taken before Kandahar. 11 faces, all alive because she'd refused to quit. Park sat, uncomfortable. I'm thinking about quitting the program. Why? Because I don't fit. Because every time I demonstrate a skill I learned in Fallujah, attendings look at me like I'm dangerous. Because I'm tired of pretending I'm less capable than I am to make other people comfortable. He met her eyes. How do you do it? How do you exist in both worlds? Claire was quiet for a moment. I stopped trying to exist in both. I exist in one world now, and I bring the other with me. I don't hide my experience anymore. I don't apologize for knowing things, but I also don't weaponize it. I don't make other people feel small because I've seen things they haven't. She leaned forward. Captain Park, you're not dangerous. You're experienced. There's a difference. Dangerous means reckless. Experienced means competent. Own your competence, but also recognize that civilian medicine has value beyond what we learned in war. Patience, precision, the luxury of time, those matter too. What if they don't want me here? Then they're idiots. But more likely they're scared. Because excellence makes people confront their own limitations. Your job isn't to make them comfortable. Your job is to save lives. Do that, and they'll come around. Park nodded slowly. You really believe that? I'm still here, aren't I? He smiled. Left her office looking lighter. Claire checked her watch. 2 p.m. She had a surgery scheduled at 3. Thoracic repair, young woman, car accident, routine. She could do it in her sleep. Her phone buzzed. Text from Hawk, now recovered and back on active duty. Team wants to do a reunion dinner, next month. You in? She typed back. Maybe. Depends on surgery schedule. His response was immediate. That's not a no. Progress. She smiled. Put the phone away. Yuki appeared in the doorway. You have a visitor. Lobby. Who? Didn't say. Just asked for Lieutenant Commander Shepard. Yuki grinned. You're getting famous. People magazine called yesterday. Wanted to do a story on you. Tell them no. I did. But Claire, you can't hide forever. You're doing something important here. The program's changing lives. 23 veterans have enrolled in surgical residencies because of you. Trauma survival rates are up 18% since you implemented your triage protocols. The Department of Defense wants to adopt your curriculum nationally. That's the program, not me. The program exists because of you. Own it. Yuki left. Claire sat alone in her office, staring at the Navy Cross on the wall. Still not sure she deserved it, but learning to live with the weight of it. She went down to the lobby. A woman waited there. Late 20s, blonde, nervous energy. She stood when Claire approached. Dr. Shepard? I'm Emily Rodriguez, Chief Rodriguez's daughter. Claire remembered. the 6-year-old girl in the photo Rodriguez had shown her. She'd be older now, mid-20s. Emily, your father talks about you constantly. He talks about you too. Says you gave him a future. Gave us a future. Emily held out an envelope. I'm applying to medical school. I want to be a trauma surgeon because of what you did for my dad. I was hoping you might write me a recommendation letter. Claire took the envelope, felt the weight of it, the responsibility of influence. Why trauma surgery? Because my dad came home. Because you made sure he came home. Because I want to be the person who gives other kids their parents back. Emily's eyes were bright, determined. I know what it costs. Dad has nightmares. He wakes up sometimes thinking he's back in Afghanistan. But he's here. He walked me down the aisle at my wedding last year. He'll meet his grandchildren someday. All because you didn't give up on him. Claire's throat went tight. Emily, I'd be honored to write your recommendation. Thank you. Emily hesitated. Can I ask you something? Dad said you almost didn't come home. That you were injured badly enough that most people would have quit. What made you keep going? Claire thought about Kandahar. The explosion. The 11 people who needed her. The 3 children she couldn't reach. The weight of her leg, shattered and useless. And the decision to keep moving anyway. Because stopping meant people died. And I wasn't ready to accept that. She paused. Your father, the others, they deserved someone who wouldn't quit. So I didn't. That's why I want to be like you. Don't be like me. Be better. Learn from what I did right and what I did wrong. Build something new. Emily smiled. I'll try. She left. Claire stood in the lobby, holding the envelope, watching the hospital move around her. Patients being wheeled to surgery. Families waiting for news. Doctors making rounds. The ordinary machinery of saving lives. Her pager went off. Trauma alert. Multiple vehicle collision. She was needed. Claire moved toward the emergency department. No hesitation. No second guessing. Just muscle memory and 5 years of experience she'd tried to hide and finally learned to own. The doors opened. Chaos inside. 3 gurneys. Blood. Nurses shouting vitals. Residents trying to establish control. Claire assessed in seconds. Prioritized. Directed. First patient to OR1, tension pneumothorax. Second patient needs CT, possible brain bleed. Third patient is stable. Monitor for internal bleeding but not critical yet. She turned to the senior resident. You take the first? I'll take the second. Move. They moved. 4 hours later, all 3 patients were stable. 1 in ICU, 2 in recovery. No losses. Not today. Claire stripped off her surgical gown, washed her hands, felt the familiar ache in her leg, the reminder that everything cost something, but also the reminder that she'd survived, that she was still here, still saving lives. Feldman found her in the scrub room. Good work today. Just doing the job. No, you're doing more than the job. You're building something. The combat medicine program has a waiting list now. We've had inquiries from 4 other hospitals wanting to implement similar programs. The VA is asking you to consult on veteran healthcare integration. He paused. You're changing the system, Claire. The thing you tried to hide from is becoming your legacy. I'm not looking for a legacy. I know. That's why you're earning one. Feldman smiled. There's someone else here to see you. Conference room. Claire followed him. Opened the conference room door. 20 veterans stood inside. All former military medical personnel, all now in civilian healthcare, all part of her program. They stood at attention when she entered. Captain Park spoke. Ma'am, we wanted to say thank you for showing us we belong here, for proving that what we learned in war has value in peace, for not letting us quit when things got hard. Claire looked at their faces, saw determination, saw hope, saw the future of trauma medicine being built by people who understood that saving lives sometimes meant breaking rules, trusting instinct, and refusing to accept death as inevitable. You don't need to thank me, she said. You're here because you're excellent, because you have skills this field desperately needs, because you decided your service didn't end when you took off the uniform. She paused. I'm not your hero. I'm just someone who went first. Now it's your turn. Go save lives. Go build careers. Go prove that veterans belong everywhere, especially in places that heal. They relaxed, started talking, sharing stories, building community. Claire slipped out quietly, went back to her office, sat at her desk, opened her laptop, started working on Emily Rodriguez's recommendation letter. In the middle of writing, her phone buzzed. Hawk again. Torres is getting married, wants you to be there. Dates in the message. Come. Bring your crutch and your stubborn pride. We'll love you anyway. Claire smiled, typed back, I'll be there. Put the phone down. Went back to the letter. Wrote about resilience, about sacrifice, about the kind of person who sees broken things and decides to fix them. Outside her window, the sun was setting. Another day finished, another set of lives saved, another step forward in a journey she'd thought ended in Kandahar but was really just beginning. The Navy Cross caught the last light. Claire looked at it. Still wasn't sure she deserved it, but she was learning to carry it, learning that some scars were proof of survival, not evidence of failure. Her pager went off again. New trauma incoming. Claire stood, grabbed her crutch, headed for the emergency department. Some people run toward danger because they don't know better. Others run toward it because they know exactly what's at stake and decide it's worth it anyway. Claire Shepard was the second kind. Always had been. Finally accepting that she always would be. The doors opened. She stepped through, ready for whatever came next. Because that's what you do when you refuse to quit. You keep moving. Keep fighting. Keep saving the people who need you most. Even when your leg is broken. Even when the world is burning. Even when everyone tells you to stop. You keep going. Because lives depend on it. Because quitting isn't an option. Because somewhere, someone is waiting for a miracle. And you're the closest thing they're going to get. Ghost had finally found peace. Not by hiding from who she was, but by embracing it. By understanding that the woman who limped through hospital halls was the same woman who'd carried wounded soldiers through fire. Same person, same strength, just different battlefield. And this time, she wasn't alone. She had a team, a program, a legacy being built by the people she'd inspired. The trauma patient arrived. Claire moved to assess, her hands steady, her mind clear, her purpose absolute. This was who she was. This was what she did. And she'd never apologize for it again.